I know you've said it, but I am going to stress this again because I'm a big advocate for it.
Hello and welcome to Epic Flail 40k Tactics. My name's Luke, and this week I will be mostly talking about demons. More specifically, this is a faction focus. I'm joined today by a special guest. We're going to go through what to expect if maybe this is the first time you're coming up against this faction, or if you're considering picking up this army and collecting it yourself, some things to consider, some tips that are going to help you on the way to becoming a master with this faction. Let's get started. Joining me today is Franco. So before we dive into the Chaos Demons faction primer, take a moment to introduce yourself, maybe set the scene for who you are and why people should listen to you.
So I am Franco. I am the true demon lord. So I am kind of, I guess, the demon guys, right? So I have my channel. I've been playing the faction. I would quite confidently say I have played the faction longer than anyone else currently in the world. I've been playing it since the first demon book came out in 4th edition. So, and 17 years non-stop playing the faction. Most of that time just solely. So I know my thing, and I'm quite a prevalent competitive player on the UK tournament scene. Again, all with demons. So yeah, and I obviously create all the content on YouTube and Facebook. So that's something to look out for, where it's all just completely 100% demon dedicated.
So you go by True Demon Lord. So is that the way to search for you on YouTube if anyone is interested in more demon content?
Yeah, so True Demon Lord, demon spelled obviously the way GW spell it. True Demon Lord, you look out for the logo that has like the demonic lady and the True Demon Lord on it. Quite easy to find, especially on Facebook and Instagram as well. And if you're in the Chaos Demon Facebook group, I'm incredibly active in there, normally under my own name, but normally sharing my Facebook page in there. So yeah, pretty easy to find. True Demon Lords just bring it all straight up quite easily.
Fantastic. Just jogged my memory of seeing a post that came across my Facebook feed today of a certain accolade that you've now achieved. So what's going on with that? And is your passport ready? If you got all that sorted?
It's actually not. It ran out like 2 months ago, so I need to get that sorted. But yeah, so I will obviously going to go into it on my channel, but I did win one of the golden tickets for the Warhammer World Championships in November in America, which is pretty nuts because I had no plan on going to America this year, but you know, how many times you get that opportunity? So I am going to America, but yes, so I did win a golden ticket on the weekend, which is still processing it, still amazing. So the True Demon Lord is going to Atlanta, which I love, and I can't wait to make some really cool content on that. So yeah.
It's going to be amazing. Well done. So this is going to serve as a primer for anyone who is interested in picking up demons, or maybe they've got an upcoming game and they've just not played against demons. Maybe you've been playing demons for a little while and you're thinking that you could benefit from a little bit of advice, some info on the faction. So that is the main purpose of this video. So first and foremost, off the bat, it would be good to hear from your perspective as someone who's played demons for a long time now. What is it all about in 10th? What kind of makes demons tick, and what are the things that really you want to be looking out for when you're first approaching this faction, assuming you've got no sort of prior knowledge about them going in?
So so I'll do it as 2 points. So from the playing of them standpoint, you're very speedy mostly. You've got a lot of different tricks, movement tricks, so you can like uppy downy, which is pick units up, bring them back down. 3-inch deep strike, a lot of 6-inch deep strikes which you can charge from. So getting into it, you're very I guess it's a very movement based army, which is a reason why I love them as well. I think a lot of the games are won in your movement phase where it comes to screening, setting up and all that kind of stuff. And then of course we've obviously got the 4 gods, so you can definitely you've kind of got like 4 play styles built into the one army. So obviously you've got Nurgle, which gives you more resiliency. Obviously you're a bit slower, your combat is not great, but you're a lot more resilient. And Sinesh makes you very fast, kind of like a hit and run style army. Zinch, again, very resilient, quite tricksy, a bit more shooty, not the best shooty army in the world, but still a bit more shooty than the rest of it. And then Corn is just outright combat damage. So you kind of, like I always say to people getting into demons, generally maybe pick one, because that's how I done it. I know that's how a lot of demon players kind of have done it, like the ones that I've known for quite a long time. You kind of pick your lane and maybe you dabble a little bit, but like you kind of pick one to mostly focus on that fits maybe your playstyle or how you want to theme your list, and then kind of build off that. So Like, do you want to be more resilient? Do you want to kind of be a little more speedy, more combat punch? And then combining that in with all your movement tricks, like your uppy downies and your 6-inch deep strikes, which obviously you get through Greater Demons. And then obviously, Greater Demons is another big part of the faction. I think a lot of people are drawn to Demons because of the Greater Demons. And then looking from the other point of view, if you're playing against them and you have no idea, and this is I obviously play a lot of event games, and the amount of times, probably out of a 5-game event, 3 of my games, I have my opponent go, I don't know anything that Demons do, I don't play them. So I kind of give them a brief rundown of what we can do. So you want to look out for the fact that, their key units can up and down, every turn if you let them. 3-inch deep strike, which is something you've always got to think about, the amount of objectives I've taken by just being left a little bit of a gap to just be able to drop on them. And then you've always got to remember that the 6-inch deep strikes as well, which you can come off of your Greater Demons within a 6-inch bubble, or if they can get the shadows, which is like being able to control half the objectives in no man's land and being able to drop down. So you've always got to keep that in mind. You don't really want to let Demon players take control of the board, because if they get control of the board and got to hold on to it, they're just going to be able to get to you easier, which is not good for you. And then just not letting their kind of Greater Demons benefit from being able to come in off each other, or being able to just, again, have a free reign of the board. So Demons are very much an army that want to move around, be everywhere, and control the board. And letting them have that freedom is quite bad, so you want to kind of lock them down when you can. Advice to play against them, I guess, is to try and lock them down. Screening's quite good, and obviously you need to deep strike screen as well.
So I often see people struggle in games with screening effectively, but equally, so I can see it as a double-edged sword. The whole having that maneuverability is really powerful. You're going a bit deeper into an event and you're playing against people that know what they're doing. And do you think that the deep strike then becomes a bit of a weakness when you start going against players that know how to screen effectively? Does it suddenly become a bit of a weakness? And are there other weaknesses of the faction that spring to mind at all?
So again, I can speak from experience. When you get deep into an event, you go up against these players, such as recently I played against Carl Grundy, who's an amazing Tau player, just as an example. So those type of players, they know how to play into the armies, these type of armies. They know how to kind of play against them. So the deep strikes are good, and they are very good, but I think a lot of people think that is the key to, you've got to always use it. And something I try not to do is rely too heavily on it, and use it more as like a tool to pull out when I need it. So yes, sometimes our stubbornness can get the better of us, and we will refuse to not do something. I will make sure I get my 6-inch deep strike, something you shouldn't, like I said, use it as a tool more than the identity of your army or your list. So against those bigger players that know how to screen, they have really good lists that can screen as well. Maybe reserve less, or maybe don't rely on being able to pull your, say, Bloodthirsters in from reserve, because you're not going to be able to do it. And then I mean, with the weakness that I find a lot of players take advantage of is our lack of good range support, because again, being able to screen parts of the board out and then stop you from being able to move to certain objectives, you can't really touch them. Obviously, we can take things like Soul Grinders and Lords of Change, which can fix that gap a little bit. But I find a lot of games where I've struggled is just because I've not been able to reach parts of the board, because again, they've been able to screen me out incredibly well, and then just lock me down. So yeah, big weakness is sometimes, as much as we are fast, our reach can definitely hit us against players that know how to play against you, screen, tag, all that kind of stuff.
And you mentioned the movement being a core strength of the faction. Is there any other strength that you can think of that is a good thing to be aware of if you're picking up the faction?
I love the movement. It's my favourite phase in the game. It always has been. When I learnt the game, I really focus heavy on the movement. But Demons are a combat army as well at heart, especially when you take into Khorne. And Khorne's damage is absolutely insane when you start building up the combos and the synergies. And not just Khorne, I'm running a lot of Fiends at the moment, and the damage I'm putting out actually is massively underestimated. So yeah, I mean, just be aware if you're picking the faction up brand new. We are not an army that's going to sit there and shoot people. Yes, we have some shooting attacks, but that's not what we do. Like I said, it's very movement focused, but your damage is coming from combat, and that's where you need to build the synergies and the combos in. I find Demons at the moment, our damage really relies heavily on the bigger monsters, but you can definitely pull damage out from like bloodletters with buffs, blood crushers, fiends, stuff like that. But those type of units want some buffs and some combos hanging around them. So I think being able to know the right combos to pull into your list, the right synergies, and then when to actually employ them during your game is quite key. Because obviously, again, you need to do damage in the game. You can't let people just go for the whole game and not take damage. So yes, I think thing is with demons, the ceiling is quite high. You have to know when to put your damage at the right time. Otherwise, because again, no shooting means you can't just sit back and really do it. You've got to really get stuck in, and so you need to know the right times to kind of make the right moves.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any go-to units that you at the moment always include, what like the essential things are in the list?
So I like to always preference this by saying it's my opinion, as much as my opinion is from a lot of experience. But I like to say that. So I still think Be'lakor is incredibly valuable. I know there's a lot of people that don't like him, but as much as he's probably not where he should be, he's still very good. His Shadow Bubble is universal, which means anyone can drop within 6 inches of him, where the other great demons can only have their own god stuff. Wreathed in Shades, which is his aura of basically non-operative 18, is still incredibly powerful. And the Great Unclean One with the Endless Gift, this is something that no one argues. He is just insanely good. T12, 20 wounds, 4 up in 1, 4 up on a pain. Like, there isn't probably very few as good points per wound value in the game at all. So being able to have a unit you can just push forward and like anchor a point at the board and keep safe with objectives is very strong. Plague Bearers are very good. I know we had an interview at Sheffield, and I made this point, and I do make this point a lot. I think Plague Bearers is one of the best battle line in the game. And again, their points per wound value is incredibly good. I think Fiends are absolutely great now for their points cost. Very fast, can go for the walls. Their damage is pretty good. They can punch up with dev wounds. So I think for me at the moment, they're very key units. Screamers as well, the good speed on them. They can punch a little bit if they need to. And they're actually quite tough with their in 1 and 3 wounds apiece. And then obviously you've got Bloodletters and Blood Crushers if you take more into Khorne. Bloodthirsters are great. Scarbrand's also good. Shalaxi, though, maybe her points now, we're starting to feel a bit more now. We need more smaller stuff, but she's still an absolute beast. For 450 points, it does feel a bit sore, but she can still rip through pretty much anything in the game. So, outright, I think they're in my opinion, some of the most key units, and definitely units I'm focusing on, or most of them I'm focusing on. And I feel like making a selection of those and putting them in your list and building around it, and then using because again, I'm a big advocate for play style. You can still take units that people might not see as great and still run them well because they just fit your type of play style. I kind of built a reputation on doing that a few years ago by just taking units people used to say were not very good and doing well with them, because again, I have a very unique play style. So I think those type of units, Pink Warriors as well is another good one. Just being able to focus on those few units, build a list around them, I don't think that's a bad call whatsoever.
Yeah, the horrors can be a real pain if you don't wipe them out in one hit. So yeah. I can see them being very useful in situations if people don't quite respect the amount of damage they need to put into the invulns, and then you can do all sorts of shenanigans, right, with especially if you're in combat, about where you reposition things with the stuff coming back. So there's some interesting plays you can make with that, which is quite cool.
Yeah, I've done a video on this as well, but the amount of times because I was running a lot of Pink Warriors previously, and being able to split in combat, especially on objectives, being able to just tag certain models so they can't pile in onto the objectives is a really good way to keep your primary up or deny primary. So yeah, Pink Warriors are really, really annoying if you can split them in the right position.
You've actually spoken a little bit of my journey into Demons with the way you've been talking about units and then describing some of the movements and the tricks and the understanding some of the nuances. And it's one of the things that I learned about Demons over time, is it is quite a nuanced army. Yeah, you've got a Bloodthirster that you can throw at your opponents, and you've got these big demons that do all sorts of fun things, but actually just existing in certain parts of the board and just playing 40k doesn't always mean you're wiring your opponent and running down and getting into combat, even though they're a very melee focused army. And I think that's a really good way that you articulated it, that is something to be mindful of when picking up Demons for the first time. It's it's not as simple, and it doesn't need to be as simple. I mean, if you're someone who enjoys playing monocorn and just running at your opponent, then you can do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are definitely benefits, it seems, to just having a little look through the codex, and certainly from my perspective, that's a great strength of the faction, that there are so many different battle line units that all do something slightly different. Whether or not you think that they're poorly or well costed at this moment in time is sort of by the by. They each offer you a very specific and different thing, which is quite unique. You don't see that consistently across other factions. That's really cool. You've got quite a shopping list of things you can select from when you're picking up this army, which is a really appealing thing for me. I think I certainly would advise anyone picking this faction up for the first time just to have a little look through the book and just see what speaks to you and see what covers a gap. If you've got an army, a starting army, so if someone's taken your advice earlier about some of the key units, and they've got the Great Unclean one, they've got Be'lakor, or they've got a few Fiends, and they're thinking, right, I've got some Plague Bearers, what else could I get to round it out? Have a little look, and there'll be something in there that's going to fit the gap, and you can flex it in and out with maybe a lone op character that you might want.
Yeah, like on that point, like I've been asked, this question I get asked quite a lot: do I not get bored playing the one faction? And the thing is, I think Demons probably being quite unique. It's very hard to get bored of, because if I'm getting bored of like an undivided list, screw it, I'll play a Nurgle list, I'll play a Sinesh list. Like, you can really shake it up and kind of fit whatever feeling you want at the time. Obviously, if you want to be the most competitive, you generally stick with undivided, unless like more god specific stuff is quite good. But yeah, I find Demons are very, like, a very massive toolbox, because like you said, there's kind of a unit for everything, because of obviously having all 4 gods and they all do different things. It means you generally have quite a varied amount of units that do many different things. Maybe at the moment less than before, just because of the indexes, but still, like, you could just, like you said, build the core and then be like, I want a unit for, I don't know, I want a unit that can kind of drop down, hit a unit hard on an objective and take it. You want Bloodletters. I want a unit that can just spread across the board and just move block, or Fleshhounds, and like, you can kind of think of a type of unit you need. We generally have that kind of unit that can at least fill that role. So yeah, I find Demons are very versatile and very hard to get bored of, because you can just shake it up and go for a completely different direction quite easily.
100%. We're going to get into some more tactical tips, combos, tricks, that sort of thing in our members video, which you'll find on Epic Flail HQ, which I'll put a link for in the video description. But as a parting thought on this video, before we wrap things up here, is there anything? Obviously, get the reps in, get the practice games in is obviously the go-to advice that I myself give out to players. But that aside, is there anything that you would say to anyone who's interested in picking up the faction as a really good salient piece of advice? Is there any one thing that you think is quite important to bear in mind when playing the faction?
I'll just give the advice that the way I started, have fun with it. We are an incredibly fun faction. Don't stress yourself out with the competitiveness, because Demons, again, are just incredibly fun. Pick a god, unless you really want to go undivided, pick a god, even if it's just your favourite greater demon. Go down that route, kind of learn the nuances of that god's playstyle, and then start stretching and playing it out. I know you've said it, but I am going to stress this again, because I'm a big advocate for reps. Demons are definitely, I will say to anyone, no matter what army they play get reps. Get reps for your army, get reps for your list. Demons incredibly more so, because again, we are very nuanced. Ceilings can be quite high, and practice is key. But yeah, just kind of, I think, don't stress yourself out too much with, I need to like mix this unit in with this and this god and this god. Just pick a god, and then maybe even pick 2 gods. Focus on that. Get your play down with those units, and then start expanding.
No, awesome. That's sound advice. Okay, so we're gonna continue the discussion, as I say, in the members video. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Keep rolling those dice, and stay tuned for more.